Why don't we go ahead and get started? And I'm sure that maybe some people will trickle in, and that's perfectly fine and good. So anyhow, I'd like to welcome you all to today's forum, and this is related actually to the development of the Creation Care Committee within First Lutheran Church, and we'll give you a little more background in a minute. But I thought it might be really nice, and especially since she's been a very delightful member of this committee, I thought maybe we'd have Pastor Laurel start out with a word.
Thank you. It's an honor to be part of this committee. And thank you for all being here and being interested in creation care. And thank you, Sandy Gunderson, for coming with Becker County. And I know that you and Bill have done this before, but it's a joy to be able to welcome you here. So, yeah, thanks. So let's begin with our prayer. And Lord God, we thank you because you are the one who created this earth, this universe where we live. You've given us breath, you've given us trees, you've given us skies and flowers and birds and just all the most wonderful things we can imagine, everything in creation. You've given it to us to enjoy, like the garden you created. You asked us to sustain it, to care for it. And so bless us as we learn the ways that we can work within our world with you to care for those best gifts that you have given us. Each other, our world, and our Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. I too would like to welcome Sandy Gunderson here. The two of us have kind of become partners in this effort, and I don't know if, I suspect most of you have seen Sandy on TV3, and this lady does wonderful presentations and can exude absolute joy and helping with the recycling effort and a variety of things that help our environment. Well, I'll backtrack a little bit, and I suspect that probably you did see our newsletter that came out with regards to the Creation Care Committee. If not, take a peek at it, and I'll kind of go over a few comments with this. And the concept of creation care is kind of become sort of central as far as who we are. Each week in church, through the Apostles' Creed, we recognize God's creation. The Bible, particularly in Genesis, reviews the concept of dominion and what has later been translated into stewardship. And unfortunately, over the years, domination on our earth has meant a lot of different things, and it's meant things for human convenience and has resulted somewhat in pollution and overuse of our natural resources, and in some respects species extinction. And many of us believe that in Genesis and God's intent was stewardship, caretaking of our planet, and all the things that I think probably rest down deep in our hearts here. And I like a quote that we picked up on. There was a theologian by the name of Aaron Armstrong in what was called the Gospel Project. And this is paraphrase here, but I think it gives you kind of the gist of it. So it was kind of God intended for us to guard and protect the earth. And just as work of art is a reflection of the artist, creation is a reflection of the character and intent of God. So when given the command to steward the earth, I think God expected us to reflect his love for the earth and all of his inhabitants. And so as we kind of start this today, maybe what we should be asking ourselves is how well are we doing this at First Lutheran and as we interface with our community, etc. So the Creation Care Committee, which is alive and well, and actually for those of you that have an interest, we next meet this Wednesday at 1 o'clock, so Wednesday the 19th. And as with most meetings here, this is wide open, and we'd love to have you participate in it as well. And so this kind of, for us, became how can we as a congregation become, caretakers of the earth, and why not the church sort of becoming a forum for our community. We can be the leaders, with this, and so I think this is kind of probably what has our group going here. And so we can look at it in terms of the low-hanging fruit, which would be reducing our waste production here, the reuse as we're doing, with our coffee cups here. I don't see any plastic water bottles in here, so those are good things. Perhaps the church is ripe to start a robust recycling program. We probably are in position to even kind of try to further the cause in the homes of our membership as well. We can maybe endorse reusable bags that we carry to the grocery stores. Maybe some bags eventually will have First Lutheran Church logo on it. We've discussed such things as that. And so the opportunities abound, including, how well do we do energy consumption here? Are we embracing, clean energy within the church, etc. And one of the interesting things that the committee also looked at is that this really should become kind of an intergenerational type of move as well. And so we're happy to say that Emma, has been with us and has furthered a bunch of ideas of how our youth and the next generation of conservation stewards can probably grow up within our church as well. And so I think we're off and running, and so I'll just kind of leave it with the fact that I think we've got a great opportunity and a pretty monumental responsibility that I think this church as a body could probably carry out within our community. And the other thing that I like to think about is that it's not just for us, the members of the congregation and the human community, but just think about all the other inhabitants that can't speak for themselves. And we really, the church, I think, has to be a real basis for speaking for those that have no voice. So given that, we really understand that one of the real low-hanging fruits here is what can we do in terms of reduce, reuse, and recycle. And so I'd like to bring Sandy back in with this because, again, I think Sandy can probably help give us direction and help us carry the ball for what we might do, church-wise, and probably get the whole congregation to embrace it as well. So,
Thank you. I think you're actually doing a lot. I mean, I guess I'm not sure how many churches do the reusable type containers. When you have funerals or you have events here going on, you don't see styrofoam come out. You don't see plastic silverware come out. And that's really a commitment to waste reduction. And I think that's really a nonverbal sign. I just talked to someone, I was just telling Bill today that I talked to someone that went to church and they used styrofoam at their church and plastic silverware, and she brought her own plate and her own cup. Took it out of her bag and, was waiting in line, and everybody is kind of looking around. But what a great example. Not saying anybody, not making anybody feel bad about, what they're using, but just in a nonverbal way saying, I choose not to make that waste. And so even that simple, I do that at picnics. When we have meetings at the courthouse, I'll bring, glass mugs or reusable mugs like that. It requires more of a commitment because then someone has to wash the dishes but that kind of thing. And it's just those simple things that we do, whether we're going to the grocery store. How many people when they go to the grocery store, they bring their own bags? And you don't have to, I don't want to, there's no judgment here, but I can't tell you the number of times that I have people tell me, I forget my bags at home, or I forget them in my trunk. And it's a hard thing to remember. It's just building that habit in. Just as simple as at home. I hear a few people, but mostly the people that talk to me are saying, Sandy, I recycle. I hardly ever have any garbage because I recycle everything and I compost everything. But bringing reusable bags, using reusable containers, even at Christmas, at birthdays, reusing containers, boxes, using bags. I think a lot of people have gone to the gift bags so that you can keep reusing those for a long time. Just as simple as donating clothes, and I think that's pretty common too, having coat drives, having clothing drives. I've been hearing more and more about that lately, that people, we live in a community that has a hankering for clothing and food and that kind of things. And churches are really the number one place, I think, that really understands that we have to care for our community, really. And so I think what you already do here, but reducing, for us, reducing waste, composting. Does anybody compost? That's really simple.
Kind of.
Yeah, it's really simple.
And as long as Sandy raised the question as well for participation, please feel free to chime in. You know, this is definitely an open discussion.
It's a really simple process. I know some people don't do it just because it's too hard. It's really not hard. And if anybody would want to have a compost class, we could do that at church. We can do it wherever. I'll have one at the courthouse if you think people are interested. It would be great. It's just a simple thing to do. And really, as far as a solid waste field, that for weight-wise in a garbage, that could be up to 50%. And what's the one thing in your garbage that smells? It's the food waste. And so if you get that out of there and put it in a compost pile and you mix it with a little bit of grass and leaves, it's black gold for your garden, for your plants, for your lawn. That's something really easy. And even as a church, you can do it here. And at some point in the next year or two, I would say that we as a county will be source separating organics. We'll be collecting organics from folks and bringing it to a common site and then recycling it. I would say in the next year or two. So that's coming down the line. But I don't know, do you have recycling bins throughout the church? Mm-hmm. Do you have, does anybody have the curbside bin? The blue bin, the carts that have wheels? You can get those for the church too, if you don't have them yet.
Okay. How about compost? You talked about compost, but there's compost bins that you can get from the county or the container.
Yep, we have compost bins that we have for sale. That they're pretty simple. They look kind of like a little igloo. Thank you, Nancy. But you can get them at Menards. You can get them almost anywhere, or you can make your own. It can just be chicken wire and fence posts. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I actually have. This is a great one. Scott, you probably don't need this.
Sandy,
Okay. That's just one simple way to compost. That's a great way to reduce the waste in your garbage. And then between composting and recycling, there's not a lot left. And I hear from a lot of people, after they do those two things, they tend to, when they go to the grocery store, they look at it a little differently. Like, I'm gonna buy something with less packaging. How many times do you go in and buy something and it's got 4 packages before you get to the thing that you really wanted? And then this one, if you're interested, is, and I know the paper is, I'm not meaning to kill you with paper. If you're interested in it, I want you to take it, but it's diagnosing common problems of composting. Just because it's this time of year, people are starting to gear up for, I'm composting, okay. It's not complicated, and it's really fun. It smells great, and it's so good for your flowers, your trees, your lawn, your garden. Mm-hmm. And so that would be, I would say that, and then just kicking up recycling. We try and make it as easy as we can in Becker County. We recycle paper, plastic, and it's number 1 through 7 that we recycle. So margarine tubs and butter tubs and clamshell to-go containers, pop containers, laundry detergent type heavier duty containers, all that is recyclable. You can put in our big blue bins, or you can put it in the wheeled carts that are at curbside, the blue ones. Those, that can all go in there. metal. In our big blue bins, you can put scrap metal and aluminum and tin. And this summer, we started doing something where you could do plastic, metal, and cartons. That's something new. We wanted to make it easier for folks. If you make it easier, more people want to do it. And so, and then also someone said, well, why do you do that? Because I like separating it. And a lot of people, you know, that's the way we've done it for a long time. It makes it easier for folks, so more folks will do it, and also it increases capacity. When we go out to pick up the recycling at our remote sites, we have 46 sites throughout the county. And it increases capacity. You can put more product in a bin. Rather than just metal, you can put metal, plastic, and so we have 3 bins that you can fill with the metal, the plastic, and the cartons instead of just the 2, if that makes sense. And so just trying to make it easier. Down the line, we hope to do shrink film in the not too distant future. We already do egg plastic. Something exciting this year, Dynamic Homes wraps their homes in plastic. We're recycling all that plastic now. And then also their insulation bags. So it is changing. Last year they did more than 33 tons of plastic. And that all used to go in the garbage. And so that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's quite a bit. And so we're always looking for new items. So if you know if someone has a business or even household, if you really want to be able to recycle something, give our office a call. We're always looking into windshield glass and bumpers, car bumpers. So that would be more automotive type, auto body shops. But that's a real problem, and it weighs a lot, and it doesn't incinerate well, at least the glass doesn't. And so we're looking for markets. There's some new markets coming up that will do auto glass. So that's kind of exciting. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years, and it is so exciting. Garbage. Who would think that garbage would be, it is exciting.
Hey, you mentioned the incinerator. As this becomes more and more effective, is the county going to have difficulty meeting its contractual equipment or requirement to provide for the incinerator?
Well, it could be. I mean, our goal is to get to a 60% rate at some point that, you know, they might have to reevaluate that. We're not at a 60% rate, but when we signed on with the PERM incinerator or the PERM resource recovery facility, we signed on to say, yes, we will work towards a 60% recycling rate. And I think we're at about a 45, 43% right now. So we've got some work to do, but our recycling has increased. With economy, I don't know if anybody thought of this, but recycling and garbage are a real good indicator of economies. So recycling has gone up greatly. We've done a great job in Becker County. We're almost at 3,000 ton. And I remember when we started with the big blue bins, about almost 10 years ago, we were at 1,000 tons, and it had just steadied. It wasn't increasing at all. Recycling wasn't increasing at all. So we've done a great job in 10 years. Everybody, you know, it's because of you that Becker County has done such a great job. We have some work to do for sure, but garbage is also going up. Actually, last year garbage went down. Recycling continued to go up, and garbage went down a tish. That in 2018. In 2019, it went up. It went back up a little bit, and that's because the economy's better. More people buy more, the better the economy is. And so I don't think that's going to be a concern in the near future for sure. Down the line, they may have to reevaluate that.
Well, look at the work that you do, and even a mindset that's being created through the educational system, and in other organizations, even like what's going on in the churches, and this is not unique. I mean, this is happening all over the country.
It is
all over the world, really.
Right.
In some respects, and
right.
It would be nice to at some point to say, gee,
we don't need that incinerator
that's
anymore.
that's redundant,
Yeah. I've always said that about hazardous waste. In the summer, I run the hazardous waste facility, and that really takes a good part of my summer up. And I think, wouldn't it be great if we didn't need this building anymore? Mm-hmm. That people either bought and used everything they had, but I don't think that's going to happen in my lifetime. But we can continue on and do a great job. And I think people have definitely, in the 25 years I've been doing that, people definitely understand I can't throw it. They understand more about it. But But we still have to buy things and we still have to use things, but I think definitely people have gotten smarter about what they buy, how they buy, and how they dispose of it. They know they can't just throw it in most of the time. Medications, people know they shouldn't be throwing it in the garbage. You're not always sure what to do with it, so then it's a great thing that they call,
You know, one of the bonuses of hanging around with Sandy for me also, and what made me think about this was garbage generation, is that Nancy and I find that when we walk into stores now, packaging has an effect on what we purchase. And so sometimes I'll walk on by or, choose something that has the lesser of two evils, or something that's entirely recyclable or compostable. And there's some astounding things, and I brought this along as a prop. At Christmas time, I took my mother and father to the University of Minnesota Landscape Arboretum, and we had lunch there. And I was kind of looking at, the cups and utensils that they had at lunchtime. Every single one of these items that you look at are compostable. And they will break down within 6 months. Even this thing, that looks like plastic, these are now being derived out of plant products, corn, as part of it, talc. And I found that the utensils in this, from a strength standpoint, these are actually stronger than plastic, for that matter. So, when we can't reuse items, for the church has an outing, etc., these are potential options. This happens to come out of a company called World Centric. And it's catching on a little bit more. A lot of the purchases now are through Amazon, and you have the packaging issues and things like that. But, there just are more and more ways that we probably can generate less that actually goes into the trash, for that matter.
How many people have heard about straws?
Oh,
I mean, that's really popular right now. It's just something that simple. This is a great book that actually Bill introduced me to, about great ways to get to zero waste, at least work towards zero waste. It's a great book. It has lots of ideas, room deodorizers. Baking soda is a great idea, baking soda and essential oils. That's so simple, yeah.
I carry the recyclables from the church.
Yeah.
Is it true you can't put aluminum foil in the middle?
If it's clean, you can.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, if it's
Okay.
clean, you can. If it's full of like greasy meatloaf, no. But you can.
And my wife tells me that if a box isn't flattened, you won't recycle it.
Well, we're still recycle it. But it takes up a lot less room in the
Yep.
container if you flatten it down.
Okay.
So we see a lot of people, the big cardboard bins are tall. And we see a lot of, not a lot of people, a few people opening the lid and putting the box in without breaking it down, because they don't want to break it down. But it almost takes more effort to lift the lid than it does to, but breaking it down is the best thing to do no matter what the box is.
Because we get a lot of smaller box containers at home. And if we have an empty cereal box, I stick them in there because we have our recycling tubs in. So I've got a cereal box that's this big, but it's full of other boxes.
Yeah.
And
And
she
that's-
says I should take all of those out.
What I would say would be more the issue if they're all that fiberboard box, like cereal boxes and pop boxes and Kleenex boxes, you could leave those all together because those all go together. But when all that paperboard goes in with the cardboard gets separated from the paperboard. And so those you could keep separate. But yeah, I see that quite a bit where people put a whole bunch of corrugated cardboard in a big cardboard box. And that's okay if you can get it in the slot. Yeah, because it goes out to our facility and we actually, all the recycling that's picked up in the big blue bins and then the curbside, all the haulers bring it out to our recycling center. And we actually use a state, it's a sentence to serve crew, it's called an ICWIT crew. And they go through and do our recycling. And just in the last year or a year and a half, we got a grant from the state and we increased machinery out there. So they're having to they still have to do cardboard manually. They load it into the baler manually. but the aluminum gets separated. The aluminum, we have an eddy current, and then we have a magnet, and we're just hooking up, I think next week. It's an air, it pushes the pop bottles, the plastic pop bottle out with air and separates it that way. And so our goal is to work on paper and separating paper. When you go to market these products, you get a lot more money for it, and right now markets are very, very low. We're in it for the long haul, and we're in it to keep the waste out of the waste stream. But if you have paper all mixed together, mixed paper brings in a lot less money than office paper, newspaper, all separated out. So we separate out as much as we can. Same with plastic. We used to send it all together, and you'd get just a few cents a pound for it. Or a few cents you didn't get very much a ton. And now we're separating out the number ones, the number twos, and then the mixed plastic, and you, as market value, the market value goes up.
Should you crush? Oh, I'm sorry, somebody else.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
This kind of product, so do the local retailers have this in their inventory?
I'm not sure. The food co-op might and Central Market might. If they don't, mention it to them.
Okay.
Coming from the public, that's where the action happens, coming from you. If a county and we couldn't do that anyway, tell them you need to get that. If their constituents ask for it, they're gonna get it. That's really the biggest.
Yeah, as I looked it up, a lot of it is online, but and don't quote me on this, but I'm thinking that Whole Foods, so some of the bigger consortiums, so it's gonna probably take a while for it to trickle down, but just even we provoking awareness of it, within our community, I think will help.
The last time I was in the hospital, they actually had compostable to-go containers. Marsha Parker had gotten those when she was there. And so if you can take them home and compost them, right now we don't have that source separated organics facility. When we get that, these will all break down very well. The compostable, you need a pretty good sized mass and quite a bit of heat going to break those down. But it would work in a home compost site, but it'd probably take a little bit longer.
I know I went to Roasted for lunch with a coworker the other day, and I was impressed. We had too much pizza, flatbread pizza, and they brought a cardboard container. I mean, I really notice when I'm given styrofoam, and so I just complimented my serving person and said, thanks for not having styrofoam, and she said, oh yeah, we're real aware of that. So I think, and conversely, I've gotten to the point where if someone brings me styrofoam in a to-go container, I ask for non-styrofoam, I'd like it to go, but if you have something non-styrofoam, I prefer that. And, I mean, at least it makes them think about it. Yeah. But I also stayed at a hotel recently where I asked if they had recycling, because I drink too much Diet Coke, as my husband will tell you. And I had 3 or 4 cans that I wanted to get rid of. And they looked at me and she said, oh, I can tell you're from the city. Wow. It's like, oh, nice. And so then sometimes when I get my, you get your email questionnaires from the hotel, then that's where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. I've even seen it at county government buildings. We have recycling in our building, and it's actually at the county buildings, it's cut our garbage like in half by just having recycling bins there. But there are places that we just have recycling bins and no garbage bins. In most of the public hallways, we don't have garbage bins. They're in the offices. They don't get emptied every night, but yeah, we have recycling bins under everybody's desk. A lot of county governments, they don't have public, like for the public to use, recycling bins where they can put their pop can or their, and so just something that simple is just sharing. I would really like to see recycling. That's that simple.
Do people in general rinse out their metal and their plastics and so on before they recycle?
I think the majority of people do. We ask that people do, especially like peanut butter jars and jelly jars. Just give it a quick rinse. It doesn't have to be totally clean. You don't have to stick it through the dishwasher. But once it gets out to our facility, it's
They're clean again.
yeah. You had a question.
What's the effect of crushing plastic cans, and does that matter at all? And what about the bottle caps on plastic bottles?
The plastic, for us, you can leave them on or off. We have a
Okay.
small enough facility. In bigger facilities down in the metro area, they like the lids on, because the lids get caught in their machinery, and so they like the lids on. They also like, for us as a smaller facility, it's not as big a deal. But I know in the bigger facilities, they like them not to be crushed, because all that machinery, especially the state-of-the-art machinery, they have an optical eye that looks at that milk jug and it sees it as a milk jug and shoots it to the right direction. Ours is fairly small, low-key machinery. I know when we used to, years ago when I worked at the landfill, we used to run over our pop cans with a loader. They didn't like that at all, because it picks up rocks and things like that. But then I think it gets baled at the time. If it saves you a little bit of room, for us it's not a big deal. But I know if it gets sent to Fargo and gets sent down to the metro area, they don't want them crushed. So for us, it's not a real big deal. But because ours, the magnet takes off the tin cans and the eddy current takes off the aluminum.
You know, maybe just a brief step back to the conversation that we had going a couple minutes ago. And you know, probably one of the reasons that we're presenting here is that we really do, as a church, have an opportunity to start within our congregation, extend our reach, to our membership. And I think this is what then kind of pushes, for change, around the community as well. The church, if you will, is a really unique position of potentially being in a little bit of a bully pulpit, if you will, using it in a nice sense of the word, as far as getting the word out. So, don't underestimate, what we might be able to provoke change in our community or in our restaurant, or if you say, I prefer not to have plastic straw, or I don't want a straw, with my drink right away when the water comes out, eventually that makes an impact. Or, if you happen to know the ownership or the manager of the place, just that comment sometimes can steer. So don't underestimate what we at First Lutheran can actually accomplish here.
So is I'm going to go on the other side of this as far as the church. And because as a church leader, I've heard this argument. Well, if we have all of the glass, we use the glass cups and plates and so forth, and the silver downstairs, then we're wasting water as we run it through the dishwasher. And another thing, so if you want to talk about that, but also we have trouble finding volunteers for the kitchen to operate the dishwasher as well, and that type of thing. So, I think you want to respond to my...
And I agree, it's exactly that. It's finding that balance of the volunteers, and that's why some churches and some organizations don't do that, because they don't have a dishwasher, they don't have the volunteers. And so it's just finding what works for your church. It might not be this that works for the church or for the organization. It might be compostable. It costs a little bit more, but in the end, if you're able to compost it, that's a better choice. There is water that's being used, and so you just have to kind of evaluate that as a church organization or as an organization in general. So, it's not one size fits all kind of thing.
I have another different angle, with this as well. Maybe taking this on and maybe being visible within our community, perhaps this becomes somewhat of a recruitment tool, for the church. And perhaps we do wind up with enough like-minded individuals that while there's always going to be the issue of, having enough volunteers in the kitchen, and, I'm guilty as charged as far as making a priority of what I might do with an extra hour or two on a Sunday morning or whatever. But maybe, just maybe, this pulls in enough people that that also find other cause or other reason to be members of First Lutheran, for that matter as well. So, and then maybe we fill in between with items like this, as well too, especially for our, bigger affairs, the dumpling dinner and things like that as well. So.
I think that's a good point, because I think there are people who are wondering if the church is to be the stewards of the land. I mean, if that is the message in the gospel, that you are to be good stewards, why isn't that preached more from the pulpit? Why isn't that talked about more, and why isn't that an emphasis?
And why, how we live here. I have 2 millennials, and, they take us to task.
Oh, yeah.
As far as our footprint is concerned, and I'm thinking that maybe in part some of that group, not all, but some of that group may find a reason to wander back into the church, as well. Because, the church does live the stewardship item. I mean, look at, we start out right out of the starting blocks in Genesis, and where are we, and what are we talking about, with that. And so what we really do have to reevaluate in the church is, are we living, what we say? And this maybe is just one way of doing it. And, I think that if we kind of envision that, our children, our youth, become a part of this as well, and wend their way into the kitchen, as far as volunteers, but maybe even spearhead some of these, some of this movement as well. Then I think we're probably doing due justice within the church. So.
One thing, this is a really good handout on composting. If anybody wants any pallets, I'll give you free pallets at Becker Pallets.
There's the deal right there. Great reuse.
So,
I do have another handout as well. First of all, just, I know where we're going to be at with this one, but how many of us in here have found, especially in the child-raising years, that one of our key purposes around the house was to walk around and turn off the lights? This little document from Interfaith Light and Power, non-denominational group, just has 25 cheapy pointers of what we can do to reduce our energy consumption, and you can see where that fits in our households, but certainly would impact the church as well. So take that home, and we'll have some of these disseminated around the church from a handout standpoint as well. So,
And these are pretty simple. To me, it's whether it's waste reduction, energy reduction, water reduction, it's all, sorry. It's all important. It's all connected.
Right.
That's what's.
Well, we don't have a fancy compost bin, but what we found out works well for us, especially in the summer. We have a 5-gallon pail.
Yep.
Cut the bottom out, so it kept the lid.
Yep.
And she digs a hole in the garden and sinks it in, so just the lid is up there.
Okay.
And you could throw
Excellent.
the whole of a watermelon in there, and 2 days later, it's gone.
It's amazing, isn't
Yeah,
it?
and, and it just leaches most of the liquid portion of that right into the soil.
Great
And when
nutrition.
it builds up enough, she just pulls the sleeve off of there, covers it over, digs a different hole, and puts it in. And during the winter months, we keep a sealed 5-gallon pail out back. It doesn't go down as nicely as it does in the heat,
Yes.
but we keep a little one under the sink for eggshells and
Yeah.
apple peels and stuff, and then
Yeah.
we keep putting them outside. So we don't have a formal cage like that. We don't throw in grass clippings or anything.
Yeah.
But it does.
It still does
The
it.
little one under the sink can smell after a while.
Sandy, does
If you
the,
don't wash it out, but the outside one has no effect on odor or anything.
Nope.
It's right up.
And the microorganisms are loving it down. They're feeding them well, yeah. I didn't know.
the county still have the black compost containers?
We do, we do.
We, through Sandy, Nancy and I picked up the county, and how many gallons is that, do you think?
It's about 85 gallons.
Okay, so anyhow, we have a little woodland in our lot, and so we have this it's pretty inobtrusive. It's black, it's plastic, container
Recycled
for compost, recyclable. Well, it's reusable. It's been sitting there for 5+ years, whatever, and so it has a lid. We do the same thing, under the sink. We throw our compostables, and then I haul it out there. And then it has a little raised up area underneath, where you can take out the compost, and of course, I add water sometimes and stir it around, but it really works well. No odor, doesn't attract flies, you don't have maggots crawling, around or any of that stuff, it works really quite well.
Ryan Tangen used to tell a story that he said he had one of those compost bins too, and he filled it, they have a family of 5, for 4 years, and it took him 4 years to fill it. He just kept adding to it and kept adding to it, and it just cooks down so quick.
Right.
And then he finally emptied it after 4 years, and he actually went to a bigger compost bin. He made a very big one.
I did
But-
find out I have to put a rock on the lid though to keep, I don't know if it's raccoon or bear, but
Oh, yeah.
those out.
Yeah, they also would like that same thing, yeah.
Yeah, buy plastic containers, all
Which is
kinds of
recyclable
tooth marks on it.
Yeah. And then that compost that you're making down below is even better than plain, and I always call it dirt, and 4th graders always remind me it's soil. Yeah, I love that. It holds twice its weight in water, compost does, versus regular soil. It's so nutritious for whatever it is, whether it's your garden or your lawn or your plants or whatever it is. It's so much better than just regular soil, so it really does work. I know quite a few people that plant their tomatoes in a compost pile. Boy.
I think it would be great for us to do a composting class, you know, for people like me who don't really know how to do it but would like to get started doing it. So I like that idea. I love that Scott at Dr. Frelick's presentation asked if we could have his slides so we can offer some of that here. I think these are great, and we're planning like at the beginning of April to have kind of a retreat, a creation care retreat, so that we can get together and do some brainstorming about, you know, the ideas that we can bring. And we talked with Emma about that, you know, to get our youth and our children kind of involved in some of these ideas too. It's exciting.
It is.
Well, in closing, I guess, you know, thank you all for being here. Again, we'll meet this next Wednesday at 1 o'clock in the conference room, and all are welcome. I thought I'd leave you just with a couple of thoughts. One of the drivers for me in all of this is that I kind of want to be able to look in my kids' eyes on an ongoing basis and say that I actually made an effort. And so that's a driver for me. And then there's a cool one that I'm sure you've all have heard from Margaret Mead. One of her really neat quotes was, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever really has." And that's the reality of it. And we just really can't underestimate what we can do as a group. You know, we in reality, you know, are and should be the leadership. So, anyhow, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you,